Have you got any idea of the age distribution of the population of Çatalhöyük?
Yes.
That is, from the community, what percentage of the population is in which age brackets?
Yes. Yes, we do. We have very precise estimates of that. At Çatalhöyük, a large number of people died before they were 10, so there was very, very high child mortality. But if you managed to live to 10, you could have a very long life. And so there are certainly people 50, 60, 70 years old. And we have a lot of evidence that old age was very important at Çatalhöyük. I don't have time to explain to you, but a lot of the evidence that we have suggests that older people were the ones that had most status or most respect. And that is very common in these types of societies. Yes.
Did I miss the toilet facilities in the buildings? Is there any explanation about that? Toilet facilities.
Yes. So, archaeology is now like forensic science. I don't know if you know the television program CSI. So we spend a lot of our time analyzing very precisely the soil, and we find a lot of human fecal material, a lot of human excretion. And so we find it mainly in the middens, in the rubbish areas. So the rubbish is full of human excretion, but also animal excretion, but mainly human. And but we also find some traces inside the main rooms in the corners. So we think that they probably had a layer of straw, and then they would use that as the toilet, and then they would regularly take it out and up the ladder and throw it out onto the midden.
Hello. I'm curious about the entrance of the buildings. Are they very tightly connected to each other, or, is there any evidence about it?
The entrance?
Yes. All the dwellings are very tight to each other. And
yeah,
I suppose, to the center, they have to enter from the most recently built dwellings.
No, they enter through the roof. So
Okay.
On the south part of every building, we think there was a hole in the roof, and they would go down the ladder from the roof. And so you would move around at Çatalhöyük on the roofs, and then you would go down the ladder from the roof.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah. I do have a translation if you want to ask in Turkish.
Excuse me? Well, my question is related to fresh air intaking into the houses. And as far as I understand from your speech, whole houses are side by side to each other, and there were no windows opening to outwards. So how the fresh air intaking is being provided?
Or maybe one of you could model that for us. We have built a model Çatalhöyük house at Çatalhöyük, so there is a reconstruction house, and we have a door at the side for tourists. But if you close the door and just leave the room, there is no problem. We don't have any problem with air circulation. The big problem we have is lighting the fire. We find it very difficult to have a fire that does not create a lot of black smoke. Yeah. Sorry.
Merhaba, Ufuk Berberoğlu. Önce o duvardaki yatay doğrusal oyuklardan bahsedeceğiz. Mimarlar için biraz çok alışık olunan bir durum. Hani ahşap atıl kullanılması. Herhalde herkes çok onun farkındadır. Onu en azından bir mimar olarak size ben aşağı yukarı emin olarak söyleyebilirim. Bir diğeri her evde mezar olmamasını orada Çatalhöyük sakinlerinin atalarına bağlılığına vererek herhalde ata evlerinde yani baba ocağı diye hani bizim tabirimiz herhalde onlarda bu mezarların toplanmış olduğu gibi bir fikrim var. Onu sizinle paylaşmak isterim. Onun dışında 3 tane de soru soracağım. Birisi o ocaklarda baca olup olmadığı, ikincisi girişlerde kapı olup olmadığı, üçüncüsü de yağmur suyuna karşı herhangi bir önlem alınmış olup olmadığı. Teşekkür ederim.
Well, so I look forward to hearing your explanation of the horizontal lines. We don't understand how they managed to get rainwater off the site. We don't find a lot of evidence of water flow, but they must have done it somehow. And so one idea about, one of the reasons that maybe the tops of the houses come inwards a bit, maybe that creates a channel behind the top part of the wall where the water can flow down. But we have no evidence of that. That's just a hypothesis. And we have there's no evidence of a chimney, and we don't know anything about the shape of the hole coming in from the roof. But maybe you could tell me about your theories afterwards about the horizontal lines. Did you want to? Yes.
About the total size of the site, when it is fully inhabited with the maximum capacity of 8,000 people, how were the dimensions from east to west, north to south? What sort of an area it was occupying, the whole Çatalhöyük?
It's about 13.5 hectares. Do you do hectares? Oh, size. It's
meters and
yeah.
north to south.
It's about 700 meters north-south and 400 meters west-east.
700, 400.
Yes, yeah. But of course, yeah, the Çatalhöyük, I have given you a simple version.
Very simple.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand how long would it take for someone, since you're skipping on the roofs, how long it would take you to from outside to come to the house right in the middle? I mean, at least you have to walk
well, it's interesting.
200 meters or 300 meters.
Yes. Well, I'm very interested in that because I walk around Çatalhöyük all the time. I don't excavate anymore. I just walk around. And it takes me about 12 minutes to go from the
one end.
But of course, I'm just walking on the flat. I'm not having to walk up and down ladders all the time. So I think it would take a lot longer than that.
Well, 20 minutes more.
Yeah, something like that. Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Hader, can you give us a number as far as the population is concerned at its most?
We think about 8,000.
And what was the population of a town that were living at the same years? The maximum population of a
you mean other
town in Anatolia or anywhere in the world?
Oh, this is very much at the upper end. There are some other, they are called mega sites in the Middle East, but they're all about the same size as Çatalhöyük. So at that time, everybody else was living in very small sites about the size of this, you know, this half of the community, of the audience. So this is hugely much bigger.
So, could you give a number for as far as this population
Of other sites?
about the sites that were living the same age or same?
Can I ask
The maximum population?
Well,
In Jericho, for example, what was the?
In where? Jericho. Jericho is a lot smaller at this time.
So
yeah.
at its time, this was the biggest. Like
Well,
this was the
No, it's not the biggest, but
No.
it's one of the biggest.
one
Yes,
of the biggest.
yes,
Okay,
yes, yeah.
That was what
Yeah,
I wanted
yeah,
to know.
Yeah.
And I just to complement his question, is how does it compare with one of the oldest settlements like Aleppo? Aleppo, because it's more or less it's contemporary by 1,000 years.
By 1,000 years. Yes. Yes.
About how does it compare? I mean, which one is bigger?
Well, it's about the same size. Yeah. So there's some. Oh, okay.
Pardon. Ali Parsa. Sorularınız olmuştu. Ahşap kirişler konusunda, yatay ahşap kirişler konusunda. Bugüne kadar devam eden, geleneksel yapılarımızda da devam eden ahşap kirişler zeminin oturmasına karşı duvarların çökmemesi için yapılıyor. Bu binalarda da onun için yapılmıştır diye düşünüyorum. İskeletin tavana kadar devam etmemesinin nedeni tasarruf olarak zaten bunu biliyoruz. Malzemeden tasarruf olarak yapılmıştır. Çatılarda kullanılan kilin bugün dahi Türkiye'nin güneyinde veya doğusunda kullanılan köy evlerinde gördüğümüz kalın kirli tavanlı olan evlerin yapılma nedeni izolasyondur. Hem ısıya karşı hem de yağmura karşı bu nedenden dolayı yapılmıştır. Evlerin her birinin duvarlarının birbirinden ayrı olmasının nedeni aslında başlangıçta birbirine destek vermek değil, kendi yüklerini taşıtmak için ayrı ayrı duvarlar yapılmıştır ama dolaylı olarak birbirinden destek almıştır. Evet.
Yes, that's helpful. But I was also asking about, there is only one of the horizontal lines which is for a wood. There is all the other horizontal paneling which is difficult to understand. And I don't think it's a question of not having enough material, because they clearly had a lot of material if they wanted to. But I agree about the basic function of the structure, and it's certainly in the area around Çatalhöyük. All the mud brick walls today have these wooden. Even a straight field wall has the same. Yeah, yeah. Is this a?
Merhaba, Lale Ceylan ben. İnternette çok kısa bir araştırma yaptım. Sadece 5 dakikamı aldı. Sizin araştırmalarınızla ilgili hani bir şeyler okumak için. Orada araştırmalarınızda alanda çalışan insanların kişisel, yani aslında biraz kişisel düşüncelerini bir veri olarak kullandığınız yazıyordu. Yani aslında hatta biraz daha ileri gidip yazıda bunun pozitif bilime aslında biraz çakıştığından bahsediyordu. Alanda çalışan insanların arkeolojik araştırmalarınıza katkısını sorabilir miyim? Çünkü bana çok ilginç geliyor ilgilendiğim için.
Yes, for example, the people who work at Çatalhöyük, who come from Çumra, Küçükköy and the other places around Çatalhöyük, they have lived in mud brick houses and they live in this environment. And so they have been very, very helpful in understanding many of the problems and the questions that we have about how these buildings were built and how they were made and why they did this thing or that thing. And so we have tried to incorporate their opinions, and in our final publications we quote from their opinions, so they are equivalent. And I think you know one of the guards at Çatalhöyük, Sergeant Dural, wrote his own book about Çatalhöyük from his point of view. And so I think it's very important to try and encourage the community to participate and be part of it and take ownership and be involved.
Atilla Ongan. Şimdi binalar arasında, duvarlar arasında su geçmezliğinin olması gerekir. Çünkü araya yağmur suları girdiği zaman o duvarların dayanıklılığının kalmayacağını düşünüyorum. Yağan yağmurun topluca bir yerden akıtılmasının gerekli olduğunu zannediyorum. Bunun için Çatalhöyük eğimli bir arazide kurulup toplanan damlar üzerindeki suların belirli bir yerden akabilmesini temin edecek eğimde bir konumda mıdır? Çünkü eğer damlarda toplanan sular belirli bir eğimle akmazlarsa duvarlar arasına girerek o duvarların yıkılmasına neden olacağını düşünüyorum. Böyle bir eğim Çatalhöyük'te var mı? Teşekkür ederim.
Yes, it's very interesting. I should have made clear that when the two houses are together, there is no gap. They fill the gap, they pound it with clay, so there is no gap. The water cannot get between the buildings. But we do not understand how the water flows off Çatalhöyük. That my best theory is that the radial lines I talked about are because between the upper parts of the walls, so you have the walls together, and then in the upper part they stick inwards, so there's a gap at the top, just the top bit, and so it's possible that the water goes down these radial lines all the way down to the bottom, off the top. But we have no evidence for that. That is just a theory. But it would be very interesting. But let me... one other thing is that, recently we have found a lot of burned buildings, and we have a lot of roof. We found a lot of bits of roof. And one thing that we think is that we often find that the roof is like this. So it's not a proper roof like that, but there may be a slight slope on the roof that helps the water to move off.
Tabii ben bunu böyle düşünüyordum. Yalnız Çatalhöyük'ün bütününün yerleşim konumunun bu suyun akması için yeterli bir eğime sahip mi? Benim sormak istediğim buydu. Bu söylediklerinizin hepsini ben düşündüm. Ama Çatalhöyük'ün genel yerleşiminin bir eğilim içinde olması gerekmez mi? Bu var mı? Ben bunu merak ettim. Teşekkür ederim.
A stop, what does that mean? A slope. Slope. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think, Çatalhöyük has terraces, so the houses go down like this, down the mound. but they're also on a slight slope, I think, the roof, so it encourages the water to flow. Yeah.
Değerli misafirlerimiz, son 2 soruyu vereceğiz izninizle. Ön taraftan veriyorum. Konferansın bitiminde tekrar kendisiyle birebir konuşabilirsiniz.
Yılmaz Parlar. Varsayımlardan, fikirlerden gidiyoruz. Onların üzerine yürüyoruz. Çok katmanlı bir arkeolojik kazı olduğuna göre deprem bölgesi oldu muhakkak. Pek yağışlardan etkilenmesi önemli değil. Şimdi bir arkadaşın bir sualine paralel olarak ben devam etmek istiyorum, sormak istiyorum. Şimdi evlerin girişleri yukarıdan. Bitişik nizam, kent. Acaba sokakları, yani ortak bir sokak var mı? Yoksa herkes istediği yerden mi giriyor, çıkıyor? Her seferinde değişik bir yerden mi evini buluyor? Bu bir. İkincisi, merkez binada bu gömülü şeylerden kapataslarıyla ilgili olarak. Bu kapataslar acaba dinsel kimselerin kapatasları mı, yoksa yönetim beyinlerin kapatasları mı? Bununla ilgili bir yorumunuz var mı? Teşekkür ediyorum.
So we think that people moved around on the roofs at Çatalhöyük, and then they had to go down the ladder into the house. Is that what your first question? What? No streets. Yeah, so there are no streets at Çatalhöyük. No. There are streets that emerge right at the end of Çatalhöyük, but I have not been talking about that late phase. So most of Çatalhöyük, there are no streets at all. And we do not find any evidence that the people who have their heads removed are higher status in our sense. They do not have more wealth. They do not have more control of production, but they are probably just old people. You know, people who are remembered as important people, who have been able to have a successful house, and they are remembered for that reason, and people create relationships by their relationships to these old people. So their status is dependent on relationships, how many relationships they have. Does that answer your question? Sort of, yes, okay. Last question.
Last question, yeah. You mentioned the toilet system, but I'm not quite clear.
The what, sorry?
Toilet system.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not quite clear about the sewage system because there are quite a number of people living there. And yes, there are some rubbish area, but I'm sure that they don't dump the excretion, that rubbish area. How is the sewage system is worked out?
So they do dump the human, dump the human excretion in the rubbish area.
Rubbish area.
Yeah, yeah. So they were living in a pile of their own rubbish.
Good God.
And it's a very interesting problem because you think this must be very unhealthy.
Epidemic, I mean.
Yes, you think that. But in fact, we have a very big team who study the human remains, the human bones, and they were very healthy, much more healthy than we are.
Yes, but the average life, you said that 10 years you're talking about.
Yes, a child. But when you grow up, their bodies are very good, and they have very good teeth, and they are very healthy.
Yeah, if they survive over 10.
Yeah, if they survive. So somehow they managed to deal with the sewage, and I think one answer is that there was very little, so they used everything. It's not like our society. You know, there was almost nothing to throw away, because everything. You know, they use the bone to get the last piece of fat out, and every plant, everything is used. But still there is some rubbish. And then they throw it in the rubbish area, the midden, but then they seem to manage it very carefully. They throw lime They throw lime on the midden or fresh ash. So they have a lot of ways to maintain the midden and to keep it healthy. Yeah.
Evet, Sayın Profesör Ian Hodder'a çok teşekkür ediyoruz. İstanbul Serbest Mimarlar Derneği'nin Serenita'nın sponsorluğunda ve Yapı Endüstri Merkezi İletişim sponsorluğunda düzenlediği Mimarlığın Kökenleri üst başlığını taşıyan İSMD Konferansları dizisi yıl boyunca devam edecek. www.yemetkinlik.com adresini yıl boyunca takip edebilir ve bir sonraki İSMD konferansı hakkında bilgi edinebilirsiniz. Herkese çok teşekkür ediyoruz ve iyi akşamlar diliyoruz.